And welcome to the podcast, The Joys of the Journey, one and only Eli Dershwitz. First, I want to tell you that, we're super excited you're here. Even though we've known each other since you were 15, we're just talking with Chris how our fencers were fencing you and nationally, internationally. And now you are a fencing coach, and now we're going to be competing against you again. So you are a three-time Olympian, junior and world champion, Pan American champion, NCAA champion, Harvard graduate, and now you are a fencing coach and you are owner of your childhood fencing club. So first, we're going to talk about everything, about as you being a coach. But I want to start with when you were an athlete, when you were a young athlete, when did you know that you're going to be really good at the sport?
Well, one, thank you for having me on here. Thank you for the nice introduction. That means a lot. It's been very nice to kind of grow and see both of you over the years as both, coaches of friends of mine as teammates, and now seeing you as competitions as fellow coaches. It's been a really nice kind of full circle moment. I would say the first time I kind of realized that I could be pretty good, I think, was 2011 2010 at the Conan World Cup in the fall of 2010. It was my first international competition. I was definitely really nervous. There were some big kind of shots in the sport, both from your club, John and Kaido, who were kind of like the big stars, and I was a little bit shy and nervous to be around them and stuff. But I think we had a really good team. The community was really good. The support was really good. So I kind of felt like I had I had a group of people that had my back at my first international competition. And I think that really helped me kind of work through the nerves of, 2 rounds of pools, repechage DEs. I don't even think they do that anymore. But back then there was a lot more fencing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that support system really helped kind of get me through that first day.
It was interesting because when John and Kaido were fencing, they started doing the results earlier than you did, and at about 8:15, you kind of completely took off, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yes, yeah,
I mean, I think John won that World Cup,
Yes,
going in
yes.
2010. So, I think it was just also being able to experience what it's like to be around high level fencers, both in cadets, juniors, seniors, going to New York and seeing what the top dogs in the sport were doing. I think I had a lot of access to what the best fencers looked like, what they trained like, what they acted like. So I think it was a little bit easier for me to make this transition just because I had so much exposure to what the top people in the sport were doing.
So as much as talent matters for fencing, I feel like mindset plays almost 99% role in it. And how are you preparing for those huge tournaments? How was your mindset on a daily basis before those huge events? Because you have achieved so much, and honestly, as I had already on the podcast, 1% of the athletes will achieve what you have achieved. And how are you wired?
I would say the number one thing my childhood coach Z did for me to get me kind of prepared for competitions and big moments was learning how to not lose focus at practice, learning how at practice to never make the same mistake twice, learning how at practice to never go through footwork with your mind wandering and just kind of randomness. Everything that we did in practice was structured and had a plan. And I think I was really good at trying to win footwork or trying to win drills and not just kind of wasting time going through the motions of everything at the start and then just focusing on the bouting. I think that's probably the number one thing that I would say is correlated to success in fencing in the younger age categories is the quality of the training before you get to bouting. This could include warm up, include stretching, include conditioning, even just the focus level during water breaks. I think that being able to have an idea every single day about what you did well, what you need to work on is something that's a very difficult kind of talent to pick up over time. But I think if you look at the top athletes across the 3 weapons, men, women's fencing, the top people have very good sense about what they are excelling at and what they're struggling at, and they can kind of immediately make corrections and changes and adaptations to their training because of that.
A lot of fencers want to be like you, want to achieve what you have achieved, but not all of them want to sacrifice and put the work. And I spoke with bunch of incredibly talented fencers on the podcast or athletes overall. And everybody said the work that you do behind the scenes that nobody's watching, the boring stuff that you're repeating, the motivation that you have every time to do it right. So, what is your thought on the kids who are like, I want to be like Eli, but I just give a couple practices here and there. I don't have to do this camp. I don't have to do this. It's like, I just want to see your thought process because now you're a fencing coach and that plays a huge role, you knowing how much you put into that work.
So I would say I had this conversation exactly with a bunch of the kids I'm giving lessons to for the first time yesterday. Started off the conversation asking them like, how bad do you want to win? How bad do you want to be national champion? You know, how bad do you want to be good? And everyone's like, oh, well, I want to be good. I want to be national champion. And I said, what separates you from everyone else? And, most of the time everyone comes to practice for an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. Everyone takes lessons, everyone does footwork, everyone does fencing, everyone does drills, everyone does conditioning. Hopefully most people stretch on their own and, eat and sleep, somewhat well. If there's thousands and thousands of fencers throughout the country all doing these exact same things, the expectation or hope that you're going to do the exact same training as everyone else and you're just magically going to, become the best, I think it's very unlikely. There is the 0.0001% of talent or physical ability that will just set you apart from the rest, even without the work. But assuming that you are not in the top 1 out of 1 million for physical ability or natural talent or footwork ability or a feeling for distance, assuming you're not a generational talent, if you want to be the best, you have to do something different than everyone else. You have to be willing to be just a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more focused, a little bit more creative with your training. There has to be something that sets you apart. And I truly stand by that kind of way of thinking about training in the world and athletics in general.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm always thinking if you know you've done everything you could have done, training as hard as you can, improving, getting the feedback from the coaches, and you're gonna go to a tournament and that's it. You cannot because if you go to a tournament and thinking, "Oh, I missed those practices. I didn't do this." It's like it's a recipe for disaster. And I think it's a reminder for the fencers because fencing is getting more and more competitively. When you were younger, like 15, 16-year-old, it was completely different feel.
Yeah,
You had a
agreed.
couple of really talented fencers, that was it. Now, like we have insane amounts of very, very talented coaches and fencers coming from great clubs. And I always tell the kids, like, you cannot rely on like, oh, I'm coached by this guy or this girl or whatever, and I'm gonna do great. And I don't think that's necessary the case. And what else can you bring to the table? Because they want to go to all the proms and balls and games and this and that for everything outside of fencing. But honestly, that's almost make it or break it for their fencing career, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm a big fan of having a well-rounded training kind of environment and lifestyle. I would say that if you want to have a lot of time to be able to do all these extra things, enjoy kind of other parts of your life, which I support, you need to become extremely diligent with the managing of your time. Missing practice for one of these big events, great, right? But missing practice because you didn't do your homework ahead of time and you didn't go to sleep on time, you got sick, right? There's a lot of ways in which we don't have a lot of control over the things in our life, and this is okay, right? But controlling the things that you can control in terms of making sure that there's no careless errors involved in the training, I think is the number one thing. And especially as, fencers get to high school and college, time management becomes, I think, the number one predictor of success. It's not talent, it's not physical ability, it's not motivation. I think it's just how you manage your time when you have a lot of responsibilities. I think that becomes the number one make or break for fencing success.
Yeah, and you're the perfect example of that. I mean, I don't really like the phrase you can have it all, but you pretty much achieve pretty much everything that, I mean, except probably the Olympic gold medal. But honestly, like,
Or
you
any
just
Olympic
can't.
medal.
I'm sorry, what?
Or any Olympic medal.
No, but but you're a world champion and juniors and seniors, and that's a big deal. I mean, it's like I feel like sometimes we gotta celebrate the little. I mean, that's not a little victory for you, but I'm just saying that, like, from your perspective, might be not that big of a deal, but before you achieve that, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like I do remember when we were watching the senior worlds, and I mean, of course, you never know. Of course, we're cheering for you, but you never know if that's going to be the time and the moment because your season weren't on top. The entire season wasn't like you're winning every World Cup, and usually that kind of determines. So for us, it was like, oh my gosh, it's like we were having like chills looking at you on the final and looking at you winning that. It was an incredible moment. Um, so from when you represented United States on a big stage, how did pressure played a role? Did you try to kind of not think about it like everybody's watching you? I'm talking about worlds, so those events. How was your mindset then?
I think kind of like you said earlier, where we talked about if you have done everything in your power to prepare as best as you can, right? Then you have to just be okay with whatever result comes your way. I believe that I have unlimited kind of power and authority to dictate how my preparation goes in terms of every aspect, but I realistically have very little control, over the actual result on the day. I could be fencing great and my opponent could be fencing even better. I could be fencing horribly and my opponent could be fencing horribly, right? There's a lot of things that I can't control on competition day. So I think that accepting that everyone gets nervous before competition, accepting that the nerves are purely a, mathematical connection between me caring about the result and because I care about the result, that it's going to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But then coming back to the fact that everyone feels this way and I have to kind of just buckle down and remember to focus on I did everything in my power to prepare as best I can. Right now I'm ready to compete. I think that that was something that was really helpful for me in college, knowing that there were days where, I was running an optional morning conditioning practice from 7 to 8:30 a.m., that wasn't mandatory, but that people were coming in, we were sprinting, we were running, we were doing core, right, doing a little bit extra, after, our official practice is over 4:30 to 7, sometimes driving home to my hometown to take a lesson with Zoran from, 8 to 9. Those days were brutal, but I think at the end of the day, I was able to honestly tell myself, like, I'm doing everything I can to prepare, conditioning wise, technical wise, footwork wise, bouting wise. And I think that gave me confidence going into big competitions that even though I was in a little bit of a disadvantaged kind of state, traveling from, the US to Europe or Asia for tournaments, a lot harder than for the Europeans, as well as, most of the people we're competing against, the professional athletes. They train professionally. They don't have the academic kind of rigorous schedule of American NCAA students or NCAA athletes. So there was definitely things that I struggled with, but I think that the knowledge that I was putting in everything I could and I was really, taking myself to my limits really gave me a lot of confidence that coming into competition, I had what it takes to succeed.
So when we go to the World Cups and we know how brutal that is for the American fencers, and I've been asked a lot from the European coaches and fencers, how do you guys do it? You're traveling so much and you coming and you're winning, because the American kids especially for juniors and cadets, they're doing extremely well. And we're always saying we have no other choice. What
Yeah.
other choices do we have? I mean, yeah, you can find millions of excuses why we cannot do it, and we can say we're jet lag and stuff, but it is what it is. You got to figure out like how do you manage that plus the school plus everything else. So I always tell the American kids is like you have no idea how strong and resilient you're becoming after those experiences. But if you decide not to do those World Cups, you're missing on something huge because I think the incredible like experience, regardless of course of the outcome of your fencing, is just like representing United States, being surrounded now by coaches who usually cheer against you and we're at the NACs and now like everybody's together for you. It's a very interesting and incredible experience in my point, right?
Yes. And it's the funniest thing is like I was gonna tell Eli that big part of his development, I personally think, were the Korean fencers because they would give him the motivation to get even better. And we've been watching throughout the whole years the whole struggle with Korean fencers, and then how this reflected great on Eli as a fencer, as a person, as a hard worker. Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I had my fair share of troubles with, a large variety of South Korean saber fencers. I would say that, even though there were a lot of losses over the years, I would say that it helped build resiliency emotionally, physically, mentally, especially when I'd come back to the club and there'd be like little like posters of Korean fencers' faces that I'd lost to at the club that people would make, like, I gotta keep a sense of humor about this stuff. You gotta kind of like take it in stride and just get back to training. But I think it definitely prepared me for some of the bigger moments in my career where I did get some victories against these fencers, knowing that if everyone expects me to lose, the kind of pressure is a little bit lower. I can kind of take some more chances. I don't have to be as nervous. And I think that in some big moments actually ended up helping me.
It's always funny when you're struggling with something and you're struggling because that prepares you for something bigger. And we had some of our fencers in like 5, 6 years ago when they were fencing. Now they're graduates from college. Of course, they're done with fencing, but they've been losing to some of the top USA fencers in the United States. But when we went to the Worlds, when it mattered most, that's when we won the bouts. And it's very interesting, like moment to look back, why this and that. And sometimes things are preparing you for something bigger. You just have to kind of stay on track and always ask why I'm doing this for the love of the sport and this and that. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. You
Yeah.
cannot predict what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
From all your titles and achievements, is there a moment that stands out the most and why?
Yeah, I would say that the 2023 Senior World Championships in Milan, both for the individual title, but also for the team event and like USA Fencing's first ever World Championship medal in the team event for men's saber. I think that that whole week was very big for me. I think that it was a really tough season kind of leading up to that tournament. I think that I was struggling with kind of perception of my own fencing and how the outside world was viewing me as someone in the past that was a really tough bout and consistently making top eights, top fours, to being a little bit more struggling to kind of break into the consistent top eight, top 16 kind of grouping. But I think it was a really good moment for me to realize that even if the season was a struggle, you know, the 6 weeks leading up to World Championships was definitely the hardest training environment that I've ever done in my life. I definitely pushed harder physically than I usually do before big competitions. And I think the thought process to myself was like, well, it couldn't go any worse than it's been going so far. You know, um, think it was just it was a good opportunity to realize that, you know, I get to decide if I give up or don't give up, and that the results of the season, you know, how everything else is going in my life should not determine kind of this belief in myself and my ability to win. And that, you know, I need to be able to kind of stand by the statements I make to other people as a coach and as a teammate, where, you know, I'm constantly telling people that, you know, you have to believe in your ability long term to find success regardless of the noise in the short term. You know, you could fence a great bout and, you could lose to one of the best people in the world. You could fence a horrible bout and still win, right? There is some randomness involved in individual competitions. But if you believe in the work that you've put into the system, you believe in the quality of your training over the years, and you really kind of find a way to persevere through the self-doubt, that, you know, you're capable of greatness. And I'm just really happy that I was able to get through one of the toughest kind of negative trends in my senior World Cup career, and find a way to put it together in the big day.
I think your mindset have won some of the battles leading to that title because honestly, Eli, no matter how much you train, if you don't believe you're capable of incredible things, you will never get there. I mean, your coaches may believe, your parents, your friends and stuff, but if you don't internally know, I got this and I can do big things, I think it's going to project on your fencing and your mood and everything else.
Yeah.
So, is there a moment in your career that was kind of wake up call for you? I mean, let's say after a tough loss and whatever, you had to regroup and learn some lessons and come back stronger and better.
Yeah. 2014 Junior World Championships in Plovdiv.
My hometown.
Yeah, that was the big wake up call for me in my career. I mean, I've talked about it in other interviews in the past, but that was definitely the moment where it clicked for me that even though in the past, the 2012 to 2013, I started feeling myself like I was kind of like a little bit of a big shot, like one of the good, yeah, young kids in the sport. That clout was not something that was going to be relevant to my success, and that I really needed to change a lot of things in my life, training wise, mentality wise, discipline wise. That was the big wake up call for me.
So it's more like staying humble regardless of the success because you never know. I mean, when you underestimate the opponents, everybody can take you down pretty much.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was about. I don't. I mean, maybe my friends or other people will say that I wasn't too humble, but I don't think humbleness was the real issue. I think that the expectation from 2012 and 2013 Junior Worlds, where I got silver and bronze as somebody who was not ranked in the top group. I think there was this kind of idea in my mind that if I just kept doing what I was doing training wise, the results would just happen. And then the fact that I was, medaling at Junior Worlds 2012, 2013, last year cadet, first year junior. And then 2014 comes along. I start winning Junior World Cups. I'm ranked number 1 in the world and I lose in the 128. I think that was a big wake up call to me that there's no guarantees, right? Just because you're ranked high doesn't mean you're gonna finish high. Just because you're better than your opponent doesn't mean you're gonna beat your opponent, right? Just because you're worse than your opponent doesn't mean you're gonna lose. I think breaking that kind of very rigid mindset where, there was a certain way to train and it was guarantee of success was big for me to be like, okay, I might not have complete control over the results of the competition, but I do have control over preparing myself better than everyone around me. And from there, 2014 onwards, I would say that was a large majority of what was going on in my head regarding fencing was just out-prepare those around me, out-prepare everyone, and then I can kind of sleep easy knowing I did what I could.
So kind of it allowed that growth to happen on a further level. Like there's
Yeah.
always this one moment where you think you have it and then you get this even more like again bigger wake up call and then you just change your mentality of how you're going to prepare going forward and how you're going to make sure that you do everything in your control to make sure that
Yeah.
you're going to
I
do your
think
best.
a big thing is I was walking around still in all my fencing gear outside the Plovdiv Convention Center in the gardens, and I'm like kicking stones and stuff, and I'm telling myself, oh, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I hate feeling like this. I hate feeling like I let myself down. I hate feeling like my coach down. And then I'm talking to myself, and then I'm like, wait, but everyone says this, right? Literally everyone after competition, after they lose, they tell their coach, oh, I don't want to feel like this. Oh, I hate this feeling. Oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to win. And I'm like, it's a load of crap to just say it, right? Like who cares what you tell your coach or your teammates or your parents after you lose? Anyone in the world can say, oh, I don't want to lose. Oh, I don't want to feel like this. Oh, I'm going to do better. And then they train the same way. They fool around at practice. They don't bend their knees doing footwork. They don't have focus during stretching. They're forgetting their water bottle, their body cords. There's a million different ways in which people say that they're willing to take the next step in terms of upping their training, and then they don't do it. And I think that was a big moment for me. I was like, I don't want to be just the person who talks about training at a higher level, at a more disciplined level, at a more efficient level. I think that it was big. I was like, words are meaningless without, backed up actions.
Um, I mean, I totally agree. And I honestly, like, from my perspective, watching you and having so many of those like top athletes as a friends and our fencers who have been successful, usually like when something goes off, you got to look for you. What can you change? Because me as a coach, I can do so much. And of course, I'm trying to improve every tournament. I don't think I reach perfection. I don't think I'll ever reach perfection because the moment you feel you don't have to learn anything else because you know it all is the moment you stop growing. That's my opinion. And I'm always learning with every kid, every generation, every coach, every athlete. And so you need to always go back and look what can you change, because I always tell the kids, if you do the same thing, you're going to have the same outcome. And sometimes when you're getting older, you got to do something extra. What extra can you do from what you haven't done before? I was while you were talking, I was thinking about to ask you, do you meditate? Like, do you meditate? Do you visualize your tournaments and stuff like that?
Yeah, less so now that I've taken a little bit of a break from competition, but I would say at the height of my career, I did a lot of meditation and a lot of visualization. And I think a big thing for me overcoming the fear and anxiety the night before competitions and trying to deal with the nerves of, just thinking, laying in bed for hours, what am I going to do first touch? Am I going to do advanced lunge? Oh, they're going to pull me short. Am I going to do double advanced? Oh, they're going to hit me in prep. I was like, I would just lay awake, be worrying about these things. And then I think that through practiced meditation and visualization exercises, I actually realized that just from my mind, I could have like a very, very calm resting heart rate of, high 30s, low 40s. And then just from visualizing a big competition, 14-14 in the final, I could get my heart rate into the high 150s, 160s, right? And then from careful breathing exercises and stuff, I could get that back down into the low 40s. I think that was a big kind of shocking moment for me where it was like, I didn't need to actually experience the excitement of competition to get myself pumped up and then calm down, right? The fact that I could just be sitting there with my eyes closed and have this huge fluctuation in getting myself pumped up and then calm down again, I think it really helped kind of reinforce the notion that I had heard a lot, that I have a lot of control over the connection between my brain and my body. I have a lot of connection over whether or not I pump myself up or calm myself down. And people talk about this a lot, and it's easy for a coach to tell a student this, but when I actually experience this, the ability to get myself so fired up, I'm ready to run through a wall, imagining 14-14 at the Olympic Games, to 30 seconds later back down to super cool, calm, collected, ready to move on. I think that was a very interesting kind of exercise for me to realize that physical training was not at all a majority of what was needed to kind of dominate in the sport.
That is very, very interesting because I do love watching documentaries about successful athletes and coaches talking about them. And visualization is one of the main things a lot of athletes are doing to kind of, exactly like you said, to control your emotions and everything that goes behind the scenes. Because if you don't practice this, when you go to the tournament, it's very hard to control that because you haven't
Yeah.
practiced it.
Yeah. I can't stand I've only been at the club for 6 weeks, but I can't stand when I say, it's okay. I said, give me a little bit more voice, a little bit more fight and practice. I don't feel like it. Say, you know what? You know what? So at the tournament, you're not going to feel like it all the time too. Oh, people are going to think that I'm, trying too hard. Who cares? I would say, you think 500 years ago, you think warriors going into battle, you think they were concerned about what their opponents would think about them? No, you're trying to survive. You're trying to dominate. You're trying to survive. You can't be worried about what other people are thinking. But I hate the, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like sprinting back and forth 100 times, but I do it because it's necessary for me to get to where I want to go. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to get away from that. Letting how you feel dictate, the level of your training is the complete opposite of a disciplined lifestyle. So
This reminds me of, honestly, the athletes. Have you noticed a trend lately that athletes are not sharing their success when they win anything in fencing and social media? So
I
it's a
have
trend.
noticed definitely a little bit less sharing on
So
social media, and I think
yeah,
it's quite frankly the worry about what other people will think about your
exactly.
success or your attitude. I think is crazy. Obviously, I'm not saying full caps lock 17 paragraphs about how amazing I am, but I definitely think people are way, way, way too worried about what other people are thinking, and way less and not worried enough about um the perception nationally that they're a dominant force to be reckoned
Yeah.
with, and that anybody that goes up against them in competition better be watching out. Because I've been telling this to all the kids, said, don't you want people to be fearing you when you show up on the strip against them in competition? Yes. Okay, give them something to fear. I don't feel like it. It's like, I definitely, maybe not so humble, I feel like at national competitions there was a while where most people, when they fenced me, they expected to lose, and I felt like I could feel this energy from them in the start of the bouts.
And you're feeding from it.
I love it. It fills me with such joy knowing that, as the bout goes along, you try to attack me, I break your attack. You try to defend against me, I break your defense. You try to stay in the middle, I trick you. You go away, right? And, as I take away all of your possible moves on the strip, I can feel the hopelessness and the helplessness kind of, coming out. I can see the shoulders slumping. I can
Hmm.
see the questions to the referee that are trying to waste time. I can see the arguments with you and your coach. All of this makes me just know deep down that you don't believe you can beat me. And
Yep.
as the bout goes on and on and on, I get more and more confident. I figure out how to trick you even more. I figure out how to play the game a little bit more. I put you in uncomfortable situations. And slowly, 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 I just see the hopelessness taking over. And, as a person, I'm not saying that, this is a great way, but as an athlete, right,
Yeah.
it's the greatest feeling in the world for me.
Absolutely.
seeing kind of the hope drain from my opponent's eyes and knowing that before the bout is over, I already won. That's, the dream. And I don't think that type of mentality is at all present. And I think it's mostly worry about people thinking that other people will think they're trying too hard. And I say, would you rather be a champion who everyone thinks that, you work too hard, you tried too hard, or someone who's average, but everyone thinks is really cool? What's the goal? Is it to be cool? I certainly hope
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is that in as an athlete, when you're successful, of course, the social media is a big part of you attracting sponsors and things. And I always tell the kids, like, why don't you share, like, I'm talking about like those huge successes you have, whether it's a national tournament results or international results. And they're always saying, oh, but the other are going to think that I'm bragging. Well, yeah, you won this tournament. You should brag about it. That's not easy winning. You have 300 fencers competing against you. But it's crazy that they all want to be in that box like everybody else. So if you're in that box with everybody else, I mean, you're going to be a regular Joe. Even though
yeah,
you have so much success and you can attract so much like sponsors and whatever you can attract, you can make living off of it because a lot of athletes have done that. I mean, we can look at Miles. What he does
yeah.
is incredible.
I would say that even less focus on the sponsorship aspect and more about just taking pride in what you've done, right?
Mhm.
Even if it's, just a picture of the podium or the tournament without any caption, without any saying, oh, I won gold, right?
Absolutely.
Just a picture of the experience to save, a moment of time. At this moment, you beat several good athletes to make it to the final. You had a really good day, taking pride in the work that it took to get there, taking pride in, the community of, coaches, athletes, trainers, and admin that helped you get there. I
Yeah.
think, the worry of, I'm going to be thinking, people are going to think that I'm bragging. Okay, there's ways of making it a little bit more, relaxed and, a little bit less braggy. But I think the idea that you should not take pride in your success is an erroneous idea. And if I think the worry is that you don't want to seem like you are, you know, too hyped up on your own success, say, post a picture from the tournament and say, I could not be more grateful for everyone that helped me to get to this moment. My coaches, my family, my friends, my teammates, people were supporting me all day. I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world that so many people, had my back in this big moment. Don't even mention the medal, right? But
Mhm.
there are definitely ways where you can find a balance between not being too cocky, but also taking pride in all the work and appreciate the work that you kind of put into the sport to get to this moment.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's also a reminder for yourself, like as you say, how far you have gone. Because sometimes we all, I mean, in one level, we forget how much we have achieved because we are disappointed of the current situation. But if we look back and you see all this in front of you, and you don't need people's approval because those people are not going to be helping you to achieve the next thing, regardless if it's fencing related or not. And you cannot live your life. And I always tell everybody for the approval because all of us have lived in certain way, like should I do this, should I do that, and I think that, yeah, once you break that chain, the possibilities are limitless, like because
Yeah.
otherwise you'll always care what people think and you're never going to satisfy anyone, like,
Yeah.
and why would you?
Yeah, but
So
then you could also say, also post something when you have a bad competition. If
oh
you
yeah,
don't want to
absolutely.
think that you're only bragging when you win, you have a bad day, you know, photo dump from, October 9th, 2025, tough day in the office, had a great time with friends, back to work with the coaches on Monday, excited for the rest of the season, right? It doesn't have to only be,
Absolutely.
the glorious aspects. You can, you know, for some people, they don't like social media. That's fine. I'm not saying that everyone needs to be on social media, but if you are on social media, you should not be afraid to post, both
Yeah.
success and failure stories because of what people think.
Yeah, because you're humble and you want to share that you have your off moments and stuff. I think after this podcast, Fencers will hire Eli as a social media coordinator because he
Oh,
said
please,
it.
please no. I'm trying to spend more time in the fencing gym, less time on social media. So come to me with strategy or theory or something other than that, please.
Guys, I'll share his information to sign up for his social media course. No, just kidding. Um, Over the years, have you learned how to separate Eli, the world champion, and the superstar from just Eli? Like, because there's two personalities for every successful athlete.
I would say I'm pretty good at it now. I think there's definitely people in my life that have only experienced one of the two. And I think it's really funny to see those people kind of interact. Like when I first started dating my wife, Karen, and she was hanging out with me and a lot of my fencing friends that trained with me every day. The fencing friends would be like, yo, Karen, I don't know how you put up with Eli every day. Like he's so crazy at practice. Like he's so like attention to detail. He's always arguing. He's always on people. Like he's like, get off your phone, like work harder. He's always like, he's always on me, right? He never relaxes. He's just so serious all the time. And she's like, him, this idiot. He's so chill and just like quiet. Like where he likes to, bum around, have a good time. She's like, you're not talking about the same person. And it's just funny how, different people in my life can experience like different sides of me and then hopefully, someday get to, understand the whole thing. But I always thought that was really funny how people that practiced with me thought that I was way too over the top. And then people that didn't practice me thought that I was just like never, super serious about any situation. So I definitely think that there is the two significantly different sides of me with regard to, when I'm in super serious mode versus when I'm in a little bit more kind of humorous mode.
Yeah. Um, so how has fencing shaped you outside of the fencing as a leader, as a person, as a teammate, and how has the sport shaped all your success?
Yeah, I think the philosophy of bringing up other people along with you has definitely been the number one thing. I tell people when we're doing drills almost every day, if you do bad quality drills technically for your teammates, you are giving them bad training. They are going to get worse, and this will negatively impact your training, and it is a cascading effect. Or you could do a very good job, when you're the coach in the drill of giving very good training to your teammates. Your teammate gets better because you are giving them good training. When they get better, they give you better training, you get better. It's a cascading effect, right? So the idea that you're not only training for yourself, but you're training and bringing up the people around you to make everyone better as a community, as a team, I think has always been very meaningful to me. I think I was very lucky that when I was a youth/cadet/junior fencer in the sport, I had access to the national team and Olympic team. I got to see how they acted, how they treated each other, how they, competed at practice. And I got to see that idea of they already had success and reaching back down into the younger age groups and trying to help find success for those age groups and through mentorship and teaching and coaching and just and mostly mentorship kind of affect the next generation. And I think that always stuck with me, especially without college. I tried to be a very good, mentor to a lot of the younger saber fencers at Harvard. I think the fact that I graduated in the spring of 2019 and became a volunteer assistant coach in the fall of 2019 when Mitchell and Phillip were freshmen. So, I basically was a brand new coach. They were freshmen. And then, 5 years later, we're at the Paris Olympic Games together as teammates. I think that's definitely one of the most meaningful kind of mentorship aspects of my entire life. And definitely, I mean, it makes me feel really good, on a personal kind of selfish note, feeling that, I did something,
Yeah.
that was meaningful. But I also, I have this hope that, other people kind of see these trends of older, more successful athletes being good mentors towards younger, up and coming athletes, and then hoping that this trend kind of continues long term and that people always feel like they were well taken care of when they were coming up and they feel kind of the want to reach back down after them and bring the next generation up.
All the success that you had and the struggles you had and the teammates, because you had different generation teammates for the national team throughout the years and a different, the coaches, because there are a bunch of coaches, with the USA team. How is that going to help you, or how is it helping you now for your club? What kind of quality work you expect, the environment, the mindset for the kids, the mental health for the kids, and all those things?
I mean, I think I was really lucky to get such a wide variety of athletes and coaches that I had exposure towards their philosophies, their training methods, their footwork strategies, how they strip coach. I think I was just, when I was younger, I just tried to be like a sponge for information. Any type of new footwork exercise, I'm trying to see how to implement it. Any new, stretching routine, or recovery routine, right? Or, video analysis routine, right? I was always just trying to figure out, one, what are the top people doing? And two, is that something that will be helpful to me if I implement it myself? And I think that that's where America, has our biggest strength in terms of international fencing, is we have so many good coaches from so many different parts of the globe that came from so many different training philosophies and technical philosophies and tactical philosophies, that it's impossible to exploit our fencers. A lot of other countries, they have a general system. They have an Olympic training center. A lot of them fence the same. They have the same coach, similar lessons, similar training. So I think our biggest advantage is that, just because you can beat one of us doesn't mean you can beat, others. And I think that it makes, a really kind of melting pot kind of fencing, philosophy for us. And I think it's beautiful that we have that. And I think the goal is just to keep kind of being an information sponge, talking with as many people that, I respect and admire their coaching abilities and their club success, and just trying to find ways of making small adjustments to my current training beliefs in terms of giving our kids and our students the best kind of chance to have success in the sport.
When did you feel like you really want to be a fencing coach? Because I'm not sure if that was the case when you went to Harvard, right?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, I found coaching from 2019 to 2023 in Boston, as an assistant coach at Harvard, to be meaningful. Um, I would say it was meaningful, but I didn't feel like I was changing lives. I would say that the 2 years that I was coaching in New York City from 2023 until 2025, I think during that time span, while I was still, the first year I was training for the Olympics, competing in Paris, and then the next year I was just coaching and trying to figure out if it was something I loved. I think that I was able to get kind of good insight for kind of the impact that I could have on especially younger athletes' lives and their ability to kind of, overcome hurdles and stress and anxiety and tournament worry, and overcome, not being sure about their abilities in practice. And just, I really did feel like I was able to have, an impact on, some kids' lives. And I think that a big thing for me is that towards the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025, started to feel like both that I was more nervous watching the kids that I was coaching compete than when I was competing myself. And that I also found more joy watching the kids that I coach win in tournaments than when I was winning tournaments myself. And I felt like that was, a good predictor and message that, my heart was really in coaching and that there's something I really wanted to do. Like Summer Nationals, Milwaukee this past year is a good idea, a good, representation where, you know, it was cool that I won, Division One, but it did not impact me in any way. Like there was no part of me that went home that night and it was like, in the hotel room, like clapping for myself. Like I used to be super hyped up about winning competitions. And, after I won, I was just like, wow, this kid made their first top 16. It was so great to see. Like, 2 months ago, they told me they were the worst fencer in the country. And now, they're making their first big result. They've never screamed before in practice. They've never let any emotion out in practice. And they just became a psycho on the strip, screaming, stomping, going crazy, just kind of seeing that. And I was like, this is kind of what I want to dedicate my life to. This is, where I feel like I have a lot to give, a lot to teach, a lot to give back. I think it was definitely an example of kind of, things occurring naturally where I just kind of felt that this is where my heart is.
It's very interesting when I think when you get more mature, I wouldn't say older, but like usually that connected to you getting older, it's like you want to find like you want to do meaningful things with your time. I was telling the kids in the club many times I wanted to go to the Olympics, I want to win a world championship when I was younger athlete, but I feel like all this that didn't happen led me to where am I right now, and the joy I feel like you said from them achieving all those things is so humbling, knowing the conversations I had with certain kids months ago and now like winning certain huge events where it's in the wildest dreams that I will ever dream. And it's a very special experience and changing their lives and being there for them for a certain period of time, because once they go to college, it's almost all of the kids are kind of, leaving the sport. But I feel like they always remember you were there for them and you were helping them to do the next step in their life and success. And it's very special.
Yeah.
So you already mentioned that you're married, you're newlyweds. Congratulations to you and your
Thank you.
wife.
Thank you.
How has she, because you guys have been together, girls, he's taken. So how she has helped you, because you guys have been together for a long time when you're still a competitive athlete, and how has she helped you with your fencing career when you were an athlete and now as a coach?
I think just the perspective about life beyond fencing was the number one thing that she kind of helped me with. I think when I was younger, like before I had met her, I think that I used to lie to myself in terms of get me to train harder and to get me to push myself harder. I think I used to tell myself, you know, I need to train harder than anyone else in the world. I need to be in more pain than anyone else in the world. I need to be doing like all of these things that make me miserable because the only thing that matters in life is like Olympic glory.
Oh
And I
my
think that
gosh.
like
Oh,
I would
that's
have
a
this.
Netflix movie.
I mean, I just think that I had this. I'm not saying that this is what I believed with my heart. I'm saying that this is kind of the way that I structured talking myself to kind of motivate me to train harder and like more intensely, especially, tired from classes and stuff in college. I think that she definitely helped me take like a more well-rounded approach to life in terms of, I know what I need to do. I've been number one in the world. I know what it takes. I know which workouts I need to do. I know kind of what the overall structure is, but outside of my training, I still need to find ways of, being a citizen in society, being a good boyfriend, being a good husband, being a good, person, right? There's other things that I need to be able to spend my time doing. Like I shouldn't just be like taking lessons, working out, training, and then just like staying at home in like a dark corner, like, thinking about fencing, right? It's not a productive lifestyle. So I think that having an appreciation for, other things in life that matter was very big, and that came from her. And then I think the idea that getting an Olympic medal or not getting an Olympic medal would revolutionize my life. I think she really helped me with that. I think that part of these lies that I was telling myself about training growing up was with the assumption that if I did win an Olympic medal, that my life would change dramatically. And then I think as I got older, I realized, it would be cool for sure. I wish I had gotten it. I wish I hadn't, lost all those bouts at the Olympics. But in terms of dramatic change, I think maybe it would affect my career kind of a little bit in terms of what people think. But I think that I've done a lot of good things. I've won a lot of titles. I've been number one in the country and number one in the world across in cadets, juniors, and seniors. I'm proud of what I was able to do, regardless of Olympic success. And I think that that type of mentality kind of really helped me, find happiness in life that wasn't directly related to fencing wins or losses. And I think that was really important for me.
Yeah, I don't like when people don't give credit for the partners of highly competitive athletes, because it takes a lot. And she has been with you when you had the low lows and the high highs, and
Yeah.
she's keeping you kind of. Let's separate now your competition from our daily life. You guys got a puppy, which is now probably not a puppy anymore. He's an
Not
older
a
dog.
77-pound golden retriever.
Yeah, but I feel like you're trying to kind of check out from this mindset of constantly go, 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 because your mind and body needs a break, and the partner makes it or breaks it that for you, your healthy environment and balance between you, the competitor, and you, the regular Eli, that just loves, I don't know what you love to do in your free time. You can share with us. But yeah, and I always like to give credit for the partners, because for instance, like, I don't think I was going to be the person I am today if Chris wasn't the person he is next to me to keep me grounded. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm super
Absolutely.
hard on myself or whatever, and vice versa. Sometimes I gotta slow him down. I was like, you know what, just calm down, it's gonna be fine.
Just relax.
So what do you like to do outside of fencing? What is your hobby, if you have a
I would
hobby?
say that we're both very outdoorsy people. We love, taking time on the weekends to go for like hikes on trails, mountains, bringing the dog, letting him swim. I would say that we definitely like to stay moving, things like that. I would say that it hasn't been super easy over the years to do a lot of traveling together just because I was away at tournaments for so much. We got together during COVID shutdown and stuff. But I think that this past summer was really nice that we got to spend a few weeks kind of traveling through Europe together. I'm very kind of excited for kind of how fencing as, or traveling as a fencing coach is a little bit easier than traveling as a fencing athlete. And maybe we can do a little bit, some more trips together. But I would say definitely being outdoors with just us three or us two and the dog, and just kind of getting a little bit outside of the buzz and the noise of the city is definitely the number one thing for us.
So I want to ask you, what does it mean for you, the joys of the journey? Because I named the podcast "The Joys of the Journey." You probably figure out what it means, but what it means to you, the joys of the journey.
Yeah, I think what it probably means to me is that if you offered me the ability to have a significantly different journey in my fencing life, but have Olympic gold medal, right? But I didn't get the experiences that I had, the travels, the friends, the teammates, everything. For sure in the past, I would have said, take it all away. Give me the medal. But I think that as I've, grown to appreciate all of the kind of lucky things that I have in my life, all of the people that I've had in my life that have helped me, supported me, loved me, been around my fencing career, I definitely think the joys of the journey, the places I've traveled, the people I've met, the athletes I've met across the world, the referees I've met from across the world, all the different places we got to do training camps, World Cups, World Championships, all the people that traveled on the national team, sports med, armorers, U.S. fencing staff, the sportsmen that helped me at home, there's really just, my family, my siblings, my amazing wife, there really are too many people to name that really had a big impact on my life as an athlete. And I think that the joys of the journey would be that is more important than the number of medals at the end of a career.
Absolutely. Chris wanted to ask you. I think he wrote a couple questions so he doesn't forget to ask you, right?
One of the things was that when we were back in Croatia on that World Championships, that you got third in juniors. I had
15.
to take a picture. I had to take a picture of you eating pizza because I had one of our national champions that they were always afraid of eating pizza before big tournament. I was like,
Oh
"See,
yeah?
Eli ate the pizza. You can win this tournament." So he ended up winning white 10 nationals, white 14 nationals, and junior nationals. So
Who was it?
Trenton
Trenton
Schmidt.
Schmidt.
Reddit? Okay. Well, I'm glad I had some type of
I
impact.
still remember that when I'm scrolling through my phone, I see this picture at the cafeteria where you're biting the pizza.
That's funny.
Eli, I want to ask you, what do you want to be remembered for? What kind of legacy you want to leave behind, not only as an athlete, but as a coach, as a person?
I would say that I hope that the kind of memory or legacy I leave behind is that people remember that at practice and at tournaments, I wasn't only focused on my own success, and that I took the time and the energy to kind of help other people in training get to the next level, to be able to strip coach other people at tournaments when they didn't have coaches there. And that I hope that people remember that even though it's miserable to train with me, and I accept this and I apologize to all that have had to train with me in the past, I'm very difficult to train with. I hope that people remember that the reason behind it is that I want to help kind of other people kind of succeed in similar ways. And I want to kind of help pass along the knowledge and expertise I have in the sport to other people. So I'm definitely hoping that that is a part of my legacy. And then I would say the other part of my legacy that I hope is that as, a very new club owner at Zeta Fencing, and I'm in the process of kind of starting a nonprofit foundation to try to add, financial resources and opportunities to those that can't afford equipment, lessons, intro fencing classes, that I did my part kind of similar to other great athletes or coaches in the sport to try to find ways of increasing access to a sport that has historically been very secluded from the general population and not kind of accessible socioeconomically. So I'm hoping that through this foundation, I can do my part to try to improve lives through the sport that might not have historically had the option of even learning about the sport or partaking in the sport.
This is incredible. I really want to thank you for taking your time to be with us here today. I know how busy your schedule is, and I'm so grateful that I have met you so many years ago and I got to know you, and I can really call you our friend. We wish you nothing but the best, and I'm sure that you're going to achieve all those things that you wanted to achieve. And we're going to be always there to cheer you on and share our words of wisdom. Thank you again, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you both for having me on. It was a wonderful conversation, and you two have been, lovely friends and mentors and coaches over the years. So I appreciate you both as well.
And I just want to add one more thing is like for me is to appreciate that, to see how you grew, because again I was first-hand witness on how you grew
We're an
from,
idiot.
again, from a regular job to a world-class athlete and then to a world-class leader. That's the biggest thing that somebody can achieve, and we are really focused on giving back, and that's a great example of it.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Okay, bye. See you later.
Have a good one, guys. Just stop the